Hello and welcome to episode number 24 of The Pitcher or the Hitter. I am Cam,
I'm Sahil.
and we have finished the first week of matchups. We're recording this late Sunday night. All of the results are in. Excellent job, everyone. We've made it.
Yeah, what a crazy first week. These longer weeks I feel like are always a bit more difficult to manage, and there are a lot of close matchups. I know we've talked about last year's semis being arguably like the most exciting week in league history. I mean, this is definitely up there. A lot of close matchups, even the matchups that didn't look so close. Kind of in the number of categories won where really came down the line. So we're excited to talk about them. But before we do that, you want to get into the trade that was made?
Yeah, so there were a couple trades. One of them was a little smaller. We'll talk about during the matchup. But I made a trade right after we recorded our last episode. But yeah, going into the start of the season. So I traded to Clayton and Jake, Nick Senzel and Jake Diekman for Nico Horner, Eliezer Hernandez, and Ruthvik and Nick's 2022 third. Why don't you tell me what you thought about this first?
Ooh, I did not like it. I was telling you you should have shopped Senzel. You could have gotten a bit more. Just wait a little bit. I mean, I thought it was just too early to give up on Senzel, and I get it. He gets hurt. He didn't have the best 2020, but he was still a top prospect for a reason. He's still 25. He has an everyday role. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me that you wanted to give up on him. And Diekman, I guess at the time was just going to be a setup man. I've talked about all the reasons to you why I don't think Jake Diekman's going to be as good as he was last year, so that didn't really bother me. Obviously, hindsight's 2020 now that it looks like he's in the mix for saves with Trevor Rosenthal probably having to get thoracic outlet surgery. Yeah, it's tough luck for him. But I like Eliezer Hernandez. I think there's some risk with him. I think he's maybe a little bit of a two-pitch pitcher. I personally think that he's a good player to acquire, and I think you kind of had the right idea in going out and getting him a young starter from the Marlins who's pitched well, but I don't think you needed to give up Senzel to get him. And I'm also and just not that high on Nico Horner. I just don't see it. He strikes me as one of those middle infielders that he's going to hit for kind of a low OBP, a little bit of power, but not too much. He had a 312 OBP last year, 305 the year before. Didn't even hit a homer last year. He's had a little bit of speed, but not a lot in the majors so far. So it seems to be he might be a decent real life player for the Cubs, useful for them, but I just don't see the fantasy value there. So I think Clayton and Jake kind of won this trade. Obviously, you were the one who made the trade, so you disagree. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I guess I'll talk about Senzel. I'll start out by saying I don't trust him to ever stay healthy. He's had just weird injury after weird injury, and the Reds have like four outfielders currently who are hitting better than him right now, and then Akiyama's not even playing; he's hurt. So there's a lot kind of swirling around him that kind of making me feel like he's going to be left out at some point if he even stays healthy. Jake Diekman, I traded at. He was good to have last year, but he's super interchangeable. Although it was a real bummer that Rosenthal got hurt, thrusting Diekman into kind of the closer role. And then I've talked a little bit about Nico Horner before. I think he's a good buy low guy to just kind of stash in that NPI slot. And then Eliezer Hernandez, I want to get a young starter, and I saw the chance to acquire him. I'm decently high on him, and I think he'd be a good guy to make my rotation a little younger and just kind of slot in nicely as guys like Ryu are getting a little old. And overall, I think this trade, we kind of both sold low on hitters, and I got the better pitcher of the pair.
Yeah, I'll say one thing about Senzel quickly and we'll move on. I mean, 2019, 104 games, a 315 OBP, not great, but 12 homers, 14 stolen bases. I mean, I feel like he flashed a lot, and I thought it was reasonable to assume that he could have taken a next step this year. I mean, I know 2020 was kind of a lost season for him. He didn't really perform while he was banged up, but I mean, I'll default to your judgment as a Reds fan here. Senzel, I think you have a better idea of their outfield mix, but man, I still think he has the potential to become a special player.
Yeah, he has the potential, and the outfield mix is definitely weird there. If they had just not signed Castellanos, there wouldn't be any sort of issues like that. Just saying.
Hey, you
Uh,
admitted that you like the Castellanos thing. You admitted
mm,
this
it
week.
was a fun first half of the week with him.
I'm just saying 70 hit tool on Fangraphs. That's what they gave Senzel, 60 FV.
Yeah, I don't know. He's we'll see. We'll see with him.
Yeah. Let's move on
Um,
though. I'll talk about the AJ Pollock deal when we kind of talk about my matchup. But let's start with what we thought was kind of the premier matchup of the week. And boy, this one turned out a lot different than I thought it would. And I'm sure differently than you thought it would, Cam.
mhm.
Zane and Eric tied. It looked like at the beginning of the week that Eric was just going to run away with this, but kudos to EDO for getting back into it. But I think the real story of the week here is not just the way they finished, but the ERAs and the WHIPs. EVO finished with a 103 ERA, and Eric finished with a 143 ERA. Like 99% of weeks, both of those ERAs like win a matchup, but I mean Eric's 143 didn't win it. And on the flip side, 0.98 whip for EBO, 0.76 whip for Eric. Most weeks, a 0.98 whip probably wins you that category, but I mean, Eric's was better. What's interesting to me, too, is they did it very differently. So EBO had 5 saves and 8 holds, but no quality starts. Meanwhile, Eric had 9 quality starts, no saves, only 2 holds. So they came about that very differently, and ultimately they ended up tying.
It definitely lived up to expectations. I'll say Eric's rotation looked phenomenal, even with John Means on his bench missing a shutout from him. He had Corbin Burns look terrific. Tyler Glasnow was insanely good. Pablo Lopez was good. Zach Plesac made 2 good starts. Shohei Ohtani did not start, but he was crushing the ball. Eric needed every one of his home runs because if Zane just had one more home run, he would have flipped the matchup. But yeah, I think we can't say anything definitively, but a very good start for Zane's reliever strategy. The 1.03 ERA, the whip under 1, 5 saves, 8 holds. That's exactly what he needs. He even was moderately close in strikeouts, which is kind of surprising. So that worked out. I will say the offense got off to a little bit of a slow start. Marcus Semien did not have a good week. Rhys Hoskins was a little rough. Anthony Rendon uh, had 1 homer, no doubles. The on base was decent. So it could have, yeah, Blackman wasn't good either. It could have gone a lot better for him. And I think if this is how the pitching's going to hold up over the course of the year, then EBO's going to pick up right where they left off.
Yeah, I was definitely impressed with the bullpen strategy too. I mean, the 5 saves and the 8 holds were fantastic. I know they were tied with me for the league in holds, and I think they were tied with, or they were actually second in saves behind Andrew and Nick, Nick and Ruthvik, who were tied with 6. So yeah, the reliever strategy clearly worked. The one thing I'm still a little hesitant with there is the 8 holds was great. I just don't know if the holds are going to be there consistently on a week-to-week basis. Like, for example, in the finals, despite, for the most part, kind of shifting to that reliever strategy, is we're still only able to, I think, pick up 1 hold. So while saves, I think, are a little more predictable week to week, not sure if the holds are. So we'll see how that moves. I think this was a smashing debut for that strategy, but I'm just not ready to definitively say that it's going to work out for them. But boy, I mean, things look really good here. The other thing I'll say too is this still assumes that Snell is going to kind of pitch as well as he is, because, a couple of bad starts from Snell could have really, affected their numbers. Snell only gave up 2 earned runs all week, so that helped keep their ERA low. And Zane did a great job of figuring out which relievers to bench and which relievers not to bench. For the most part, that worked out. There were definitely a couple saves he left on his bench. I know he left Kimbrel on his bench a couple of times. I don't know. It looks like Kimbrel can be trusted. So assuming he could properly manage that during the season, I think he'll be fine. But I still think there's a little bit there. And I do think both of their offenses there do need to pick it up a little bit. I mean, their OBPs were on the lower side. Zane's RBI numbers in particular, 52 was a little low. Their run numbers were kind of average, and their doubles numbers, at least Eric's was a bit on the lower side, although I think there's a lot of variance usually in doubles.
Mhm.
So
I was surprised Zane had the most stolen bases this week, tied with Team Resnick for 12 stolen bases. I didn't really know his team had that much speed, but it was a little surprising.
Trey Turner and Trevor Story, Starling Marte, Taylor Trammell, I think, stole a base. Marcus Semien stole quite a few this week, and Mookie when he played. So this team has speed. I don't know if they're going to steal 12 every week, but definitely has some speed there. With respect to Eric's team, I mean, I'm still looking at some of these individual bats, and I think a lot of them did very well. You know, Hosmer did well, Merrifield, Ramirez, you know, Chris Taylor had a solid week. But like, for example, I'm looking at like Dylan Moore didn't have the best week, and Leody Taveras just was not good at all. So there's a couple of these bats that was kind of relying on that weren't like his top tier bats, that were a little, you know, shaky on going into the season, and I don't feel like they all necessarily really did that well. CJ Cron was another one of those. So I'll be curious to see if those guys can kind of bounce back a bit. But you know, I at least have some mild concerns about Eric's offense.
Yeah, I think so. Are we ready to talk about Eric Hosmer? He was terrific. My God.
God, yeah, I'll give credit to Eric. That was the one prediction he made before the season, was that Eric Hosmer was going to be good, and he's lived up to it so far.
It's been 1 week.
355, 412, 710 with 3 homers and 8 RBIs.
This guy. Hey, we'll see how he does the rest of the season. I'm not buying in or anything yet, but I don't dislike him.
Yeah, no, I'm not ready to buy it either. I mean, I think he's a decent like quarter infield option, but I'm not ready to, you know, slot him as my starting first baseman with a lot of comfort, but we'll see. Anything else here? Do we want to move on to our next matchup?
No, let's move on to your matchup. That's the next one we wanted to talk about. And you were losing very, very late in the day, but you did manage to come back, take the lead, get tied in RBIs to flip the matchup. Let's talk about that. What happened today?
Yeah, so the matchup has been pretty close all week. I mean, it's like especially OBP and RBIs has been close. Going into today, I had runs, homers, saves, and holds pretty much locked down. He had, or Jake and Clayton had doubles, stolen bases, quality starts, and pretty much ERA and like locked down. So I opted to just pick up a bunch of starters, ensure that I was going to win strikeouts. So Jake had actually picked up a starter and then dropped it once he realized I was doing that to not mess up his ERA and whip. I was actually a bit nervous because early on, his team was like, you know, with like JD Martinez, you know, just dominating the Orioles, Christian Vasquez earlier today. He was up like 6 or 7 RBIs at one point and up like a pretty decent amount in OBP too, but I just kind of slowly chipped away. Trey Mancini hit a 3-run homer, then added another RBI in the 9th. But Zach McKinstry, someone I just did not expect to even be on my roster at the beginning of the week, had an RBI double off Max Scherzer and then a 2-run homer late in the game for the Dodgers and put me behind 1 RBI. At that point, I had a little bit of an OBP lead as well, and I just needed a Freddie Freeman to get 1 RBI. Sure enough, he hits a solo shot, which I actually thought was caught by Roman Quinn in center, and then looked up and saw that it wasn't in his glove, thank God. And yeah, I pulled off a W, but it did not look like I was going to pull off that W.
No, it
I
did not.
genuinely thought I was going to lose, and then I thought that I was going to tie just because I was going at OBP, and then RBIs just kind of came together. at the last second. Really happy with how this worked out. I was pleasantly surprised to start 1-0. And boy, I mean, this to me kind of had the feeling that the semis and the finals matchups did last year. Just so neck and neck, pulled it out at the end. And kudos to Jake. I mean, his team played really well. He would have beaten most teams this week. I know like the only team that would have beaten my team was Ruthvik. I'm sure it's something similar for him. That team's this year is Ruthvik. Like Ruthvik was the second and third year really improving. They remind me a lot of him. So I think that team is very much in the hunt for a playoff spot. And
I just checked right now. I would have tied Clayton and Jake, but I would have been 1 strikeout behind and 1 RBI behind.
Oh, damn.
So it would have been even. It would have been an even tighter, as tight as the matchup can be. He played incredibly well. ERA, he was right not to tank that because that was incredibly close. And on base percentage just looks like it just looked incredibly close all week as well. That was a fun matchup to watch as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it flipped all week. He almost got a little bit of an ERA scare, actually, because he left Drew Smiley in, and Smiley gave up a 3-run homer. And I think it brought ERA within like 0.10 or something along those lines. And Smiley, the next batter, Roman Quinn, hit one deep. And if that had gone out, maybe he would have lost ERA as well. But, it didn't end up mattering. But, close matchup. I feel like the real story for me is all the injuries. Between the injuries and the COVID, I had Sean Murphy, who else? Pete Alonso, JD Davis, George Springer, Fernando Tatis, Ketel Marte, Carlos Carrasco, Patrick Corbin, Sonny Gray, and Zach Britton missed significant time this week, or all of the week.
Yeah.
I had to start Dom Nunez one day. I mean, partially did it for the meme, but I was like, hey, why not? He's hit a couple homers. So hopefully my team can get a little healthier. Tatis claims going to be back by the end of the week, and I've actually watched him take some swings. And
I don't buy that.
Yeah, I'm scared. I almost wish he'd just get the surgery and just not be hurt. But we'll see what happens there. I'm going to put my faith in the doctors because I'm no doctor, and if the doctors think he can play, then let's go for it. But definitely hard to see him get hurt like that and be on the ground writhing in pain. And I guess one more thing that I need to look out for is Christian Yelich left today's game with back soreness. Now he's dealt with that in the past. So definitely not something to take lightly. I mean, I wonder if the fact they got up 7 runs after the first inning and a half might have contributed to that a bit, but we'll see what's going to happen there. But I will say the one advantage of this was I did find some gems. Luis Arias has been dominating this week, especially against right-handers. He's only second base eligible right now, but should get third in outfield eligibility pretty soon. So happy about him. AJ Pollock, I acquired in a trade with Anthony for Luis Toribio and EBO's 2025 third-round pick. I really like Toribio, so I hated giving him up, but I really needed the outfield depth right now, especially with Ketel Marte being out for a while and kind of a little bit of uncertainty with George Springer. And Zach McKinstry. I feel like the Dodgers just always produce these like random like second base outfield types that just like randomly do well. I mean, Kike Hernandez, Chris Taylor. And I mean, he's come up strong for me this week. I think he had like between the last 2 days, 4 RBIs, which really helped me get back because I needed every RBI to get the win. So just good start to the season for both me and Jake. I think both of our teams did a lot of things well. I think it was always going to just be a tough luck loss for whoever took the L. And unfortunately for Jake, it ended up being him. Anything else you want to add? I know I just talked a bunch.
It's okay. Which matchup are we going to talk about next?
Yeah, so let's you want to talk about your matchup with Conor? Because that one looked like it could have flipped today too.
That one could have flipped. It was an exciting matchup. It ended up being 8-4, but it could have been a lot closer. We were tied in 3 categories going in today. I was up 7-3. Conor played incredibly well. I had some injuries. I missed Juan Soto, missed the first few games. Trent Grisham was out until this Saturday, as he was sorely needed. He got a big stolen base for me yesterday, I believe. But other than that, my pitching went incredibly well. I held on by 3.86 to 3.91 in ERA, so an incredibly tight matchup there. And then a Corey Knebel hold. I picked him up earlier in the week. He's gotten a big hold and then a big save earlier on. He was my hero this week. I was incredibly lucky to have him. And even strikeouts was close. That was not closer, or that was not very close earlier in the week. So just overall, a lot of categories were close. I did win all 6 of the pitching categories, but I very easily could have gone 3-3 in those. And I very easily could have won home runs and stolen bases as well in the hitting categories and flipped those back. So really, everything was close. Well done to Conor and Conor. And yeah, excited to see how that team does.
Yeah, great start by Conor and Conor. I mean, into your team as well. I mean, the OBP, especially for you, you led the league in OBP this week. I think that's a really important category. And I mean, obviously with the pitching and, not just in one category, I felt like you dominated on the pitching, just like, 6 quality starts, 5 saves, 5 holds. So very, very well-rounded start for you on the pitching side. And even 9 stolen bases, very good. I will say with Conor, I think, one of the questions we talked about in the offseason, and especially once Eloy went down, is this going to be the year where Conor starts to make some noise? And I think he's proven that he is going to make some noise now. I think he probably should have promoted Andrew Vaughn for this week. I get that maybe he didn't think he had the space, although now he can demote Domingo Germán because he's on the alternate site. But I think the potential is definitely there. And I think he, maybe needs to settle on who's going to be up on this major league roster and who's going to stay on his minor league roster a bit more, because he does have a lot of guys on his minor league roster that are currently playing in the majors. So great start for both of your all's teams here.
Yeah, I agree. And he's certainly got guys he can cut as well. And Ryan McMahon, God, he could have been the death of me this week. He was tremendous. He hit 5 home runs. That was enough to flip that category. 9 RBIs, which was enough to almost flip the category. I had a steady lead until the last day there, and that came almost down to the wire. He had some surprising hitters, and of course the pitching is really solid. That 115 whip, one of the best in the league.
A credit to Conor. I know you and I on the podcast in December when we talked about Hurricane Conor, we didn't really understand his acquisition of Ryan McMahon, but Conor, seemed to be really high on him. He liked the try position eligibility, thought that he had a lot of room to improve, and he showed that so far. So we'll see if McMahon can keep this up during the season, but definitely a good start by him. Anything else, or you want to jump to our next matchup here?
What's the next one you want to talk about?
I think the Ruthvik Andrew matchup was sneakily good and close. It was 6-4-2 in Ruthvik's advantage at one point today, but the 2 categories that were tied were stolen bases and holds, and they were only realistically Andrew could have just tied it up there. It was damn close. But
that's true. Yeah, Ruthvik only finished 1 run ahead of Andrew. Tied in steals. They tied. I love when matchups just tie in 3 or more categories. That's just a lot of fun. It's pretty rare, but they tied steals, saves, and holds. That's fun.
Yeah, so this matchup is one of 2. We'll get to the other one in a bit, but one of 2 that I think the actual matchup is closer than the final score might indicate. And I got to say, Rusevic's pitching, I think, was as advertised. The quality starts, the saves, the strikeouts. I mean, this was not a surprising start by him at all. And actually, he was one of the league. Yeah, he was second in the league in RBIs, and among the league leaders in home runs, he was second there. But the 320 OBP is something that he really needs to, figure out, because that's just not going to cut it most weeks against some of these better teams. And I know that one of the big question marks with his team is, the pitching's there, but is the offense there? And, I think that there's a lot of positives offensively that, you could take away from his performance this week, undoubtedly. But the OBP needs to get up. Because that too, 23 homers and 72 RBIs, obviously a lot. But like if his players aren't getting on base, they're not going to score a lot of runs, and it shows that there's not a lot of home runs or RBIs most weeks that they're going to hit because they're not taking advantage of those opportunities. So I'd like to see that number get a little bit higher for him, but it is early, so not super concerned at the moment. And I thought Andrew's team also did really well. And keeping it close. I know we've kind of written them off, but good to see him be competitive in a matchup and trying to go for it. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think if Andrew had a better day today, he would have taken it. He was awful today, though. He had a great on base percentage, but none of anything else. He had 2 RBIs all day. He was down by 1 and ended up losing by 10. He was up by 5 runs and ended up losing 60 to 59. He only scored 4 runs with 2 RBIs, 1 homer. Just a disastrous final day that ended up costing him.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely a tough luck loss for him. But I think definitely a lot of positives that he could take away from this week. I know it doesn't look like he's going to win too many games this year, but if he could be competitive in matchups like he did today or this week, he could win a couple. He could steal a couple, kind of like how Conor in year 2 stole those back-to-back wins off of EBO and Eric. Maybe Andrew steals a game or two off of a good team that we're just not expecting.
Well, let's hope he waits a week because he's facing me this coming week.
Yeah, for your sake, I hope so. But you want to jump into our next matchup here?
Yeah, so you mentioned another matchup being closer than it looked, and that matchup was Yuki versus Alex and Zach. This one ended 9-2 to 1, but it was so much closer than that. I mean, just looking at the categories, on base percentage was decided by 0.005 of a point. Saves and hold were decided by 1. Doubles was tied. Home runs, Yuki only won by 2, and that was only because he hit 4 today. He was actually down going into the final day. And he thank Randy for that. He hit I believe it was his first home run of the season. Was that right?
Yeah, first, I think.
Yeah, so that certainly helped. So really, just a good final day for Yuki as well to kind of swing a couple categories. Although I will say neither team played particularly well. They both had on base percentages below 310 as a team, and Alex had a ERA of 5.4. So that's a little disappointing. I know he was let down by a couple of his starters. Yeah, rough week in particular for Brady Singer, who he acquired. Yeah, Caleb Smith wasn't great. Madison Bumgarner, I don't know why he continues to use him. Yeah, overall a closer matchup than the score, but neither team was particularly inspiring.
Yeah, it was insane that they were actually like tied like pretty late in the day, and then the next thing I look like Yuki's kind of taking it. So kudos to him for winning, but like yeah, I mean, I like most teams this week would have beaten both of these teams, and it wouldn't have been particularly close. I think I calculated it at one point. I would have won 10 of the 12 categories against one of them, and 11 of the 12 against another. And I mean, definitely some positives to take away from both sides. Yuki's hitting, some of the bats have looked pretty solid. Nice to see JT Realmuto come off to a good start. Robbie Grossman actually had a lot of walks to start out. And it's kind of interesting to me that Yuki's OBP was so low despite that. But 5 quality starts is great for him, and 4 holds makes him one of the better holds teams this week. And obviously, we all know how Luke Weaver did today, almost threw a no-hitter there. So definitely some good to take away from there. And then I think Alex and Zach as well, a lot of positives as well. Manny Machado in his first week as part of their team had a pretty, solid week. And the Padres are going to need him for as long as Tatis is out to just really dominate. Scherzer looked more like vintage Scherzer today after struggling a bit in his first outing. But their bullpen has been a little shaky. Colomé blew his second save of the season again. I know Rice Iglesias has had a blown save to start the year. But we'll see if both of these teams can bounce back. I mean, they're both playoff teams last year. So, I definitely think they'll be in the hunt again this year, but the competition's definitely pretty stiff.
I think so. And our final matchup is between two teams that have ambitions of making the playoffs. It's the Fighting Bellies, who made 9 acquisitions this week, more than I did. Kudos to them. But they did fall to Team Resnick 7-4-1.
First off, Anthony, RBIs, I'm pretty sure he led the league this week, 76. It's awesome. And the 12 stolen bases, he was up there with EBO. So really nice week offensively for him. Some guys really had strong weeks. Xander Bogaerts getting 6 games against the Orioles certainly helps. Aaron Hicks batting third in the Yankees lineup. That's a pretty good spot to score some runs. Obviously, Mike Trout's Mike Trout. He's like leading the league in WAR again. Joey Wensleydale actually had a pretty solid week. Good to see him having a strong start. And, Charlie Morton bounced back for Anthony, although tough to see Kluber struggle a bit and James Paxton out for the year. Soroka had a bit of a setback. So maybe there's some problems with the rotation here. I wonder if Anthony might need to figure out what to do with the rotation, maybe acquire another starter or two, although Trevor Rogers and Charlie Morton certainly have looked good to start the year. And the Bellies, I think they just needed more pitching quantity this week, although I kind of get that might have come at the expense of the quality that they had, the 3.4 ERA to 1.1 whip. But overall, pretty good start for both of these teams. I think that, again, they should both be in the hunt for a playoff spot as well. Any thoughts on your end?
Well, it's funny you talk about pitching quantity because Anthony, he started 17 pitchers this week, which is the most of any team, and yet he only had 3 quality starts. I find that incredibly surprising. He had 1 quality start from Nathan Eovaldi, 1 from Trevor Rogers, and 1 from Charlie Morton, who was not great in his other start. And then he had 14 other starts, which he didn't get many strikeouts. He didn't get any quality starts out of them, but the ERA was still phenomenal. Christian Javier was really good in only 8 2/3 innings, but that was 2 starts, I believe. Nathan Eovaldi was good in both of his starts. I am worried about where he's going to get quality starts from in the future because he just couldn't, the pitching counting stats really were not there for either team. But especially the fact that Anthony started so many and wasn't able to compile seems very odd to me, I feel like. Overall, I picked this matchup to be a tie, but it may have been the only one that didn't look like it was going to be a tie at some point today, interestingly enough. But overall, both teams are in a solid position.
Yeah, I wonder if Anthony might be better served maybe pivoting to kind of an EBO-like strategy because they have 2 really good young relievers in Karinchak and Alex Reyes. You're welcome for both of them, Anthony. And they do have a couple of starters. Morton could kind of fill the Snell role that EBO has, and Trevor Rogers is a good second piece. But I wonder if that might be the move to compensate for the starting pitching kind of being where it's at. But we'll see how it goes. Maybe Anthony will get a little healthier and he can kind of sort things through. But I agree with you. For now, I would definitely be concerned about the starting pitching depth if I was him.
Yeah, quantity over quality. It's not the best strategy. But yeah, if quantity starts was a category, he'd be winning. But unfortunately, it's not.
No, definitely not. But let's preview our matchups for next week. As we mentioned on last week's podcast, we're not going to preview every matchup every week, but we're going to preview a couple of matchups that we think are of particular interest. And Cam, I'll let you kind of discuss what those matchups were.
Yes, so the main matchup we wanted to talk about was Eric's team versus Ruthvik and Nick's team, the Stanton Strangler versus the Deep Sea Divers. We both agreed that this was the biggest matchup going into the week. Both teams looked tremendous this week. Ruthvik was the only team that would have beaten you. And yeah, Eric's team was just surprising. I want to see how Hosmer does his second week of the year. I want to see if some of his bats that he's counting on end up bouncing back. And I really want to see if he can continue posting whips below 0.75 because his pitching staff was just so good. I want to see how it stacks up against Ruthvik's.
Yeah, I agree. I think these two teams match up really interesting. I think the strength for both of these teams is their pitching. And I assume that Eric's not going to do as well as he did last week with the ERA and the whip. But I also don't think he's suddenly going to have like a 5 ERA. So I think that the pitching categories are going to be incredibly close. I wonder if and maybe Eric might kind of adjust his roster to this because he's not playing a team where he pretty much knows he's going to lose saves and holds in EVO. If maybe he puts a little more emphasis on acquiring some relievers for this week's matchup to maybe be more competitive, especially in holds, because I think Ruthvik has a pretty good group of saves guys. And then honestly, I think this matchup is just going to come down to whoever's offense can show up. I don't think either team's offense was particularly impressive the first week. I think they did some things right, but both of them kind of had lower OBPs, which was definitely a bit concerning. I kind of explained earlier why I think OBP is a particularly important category to determine an offense's success in fantasy. So I think really it's just going to come down to who has a better bats this week. And I think Eric needs this win more because, as we discussed last week, Eric has a really tough schedule to start this season because he just played EVO and then he plays Ruthvik and then he plays you the week after. So I think he needs this win more, but I think Ruthvik pulls it out. I'm gonna put my money on him this week. I just
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think
Ruthvik does get a 2-start week from Shane Bieber, which helps.
I tend to agree with you. I think Ruthvik has the better team, and having two starts from Shane Bieber should be enough to beat Eric. But hey, that's why they play the games.
Yeah, I will say that Eric does get 2 starts from Tyler Glass now, which should help. And he does get 2 starts, it looks like, from Pablo Lopez and John Means as well, all of whom pitched very well to start the season. But I tend to go with the better roster and picking who I think is going to win. And I'm just kind of concerned that some of the, Eric's bats haven't really shown up yet, like Dylan Moore and Leody Taveras. And I think to an extent, Jared Walsh has had a little bit of inconsistent playing time with them trying to juggle Pujols and Ohtani. And it's going to be close. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another tie this
true.
week, but I'm going to give the slight advantage to Ruthvik here. It's going to be really close now, and it'll be the matchup of the week.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to, before we go, quickly pick the winners of all the other matchups next week?
Yeah, I want to start keeping a tally of this. So I was correct in 4 of the 6 matchups last week. This week I correctly predicted that I would win. I correctly predicted that Anthony would win, correctly predicted you would win, and correctly predicted that Ruthvik and Nick would win. I incorrectly predicted that Alex would beat Yuki. Obviously, the opposite happened. And I did not predict a tie for Zane and Eric, but I'm going to count that as a tie on my leaderboard. And let me pull up the matchups for next week.
So yeah, I had the same picks as you, except I picked the Fighting Bellies and Team Resnick to tie. So I guess I'll count that as another tie in my leaderboard.
So I guess you're 3-1-2 then. And I'm 4-1-1. We'll keep track of this during the season. I'll be curious to see which one of us has the lead.
Or we could do what Effectively Wild does and make our listeners keep track for us.
We could do that too. I like
yeah.
Make you all do some work for once, since we do all the recording. Cam does all the editing.
Exactly.
Here are my picks. I think I will beat the Fighting Bellies. I think that Clayton and Jake will beat Yuki. I think that Anthony will beat Alex and Zach. I think that EBO will beat Conor and Conor. I think that you will beat Andrew. And as I stated, I think Ruthvik and Nick will beat Eric. That one will be very close, and I am the least confident about that prediction, but I feel pretty good about all my other predictions.
Okay. I think I'm going to beat Andrew. I think Clayton and Jake are going to beat Yuki. I think you will beat Daniel and Alex. I think Anthony is going to beat Alex and Zach. I think EBO is going to beat Conor, but that one could be a little closer than expected. And, last week I picked a tie. I'm going to pick another tie. I think that Ruthvik and Nick will tie Eric.
Ooh, okay. That's, there you go, mixing it up a little bit. It would be fun to see Eric start out the season with 2 ties.
I think it would be very fun.
It would be very fun. I'm not ready to predict another tie, although I really hope that happens. I'm rooting for as many ties as possible, as long as you're not in my matchup.
I'm rooting for matchup to tie 0-0-12.
That would be amazing. That needs to happen. I will say to your point about, I think Conor and Conor being closer to EBO than we think, that is my upset potential pick of the week. I'm not ready to say that Conor is going to beat EBO, but I think if we do see an upset this week, because I don't think Eric beating Ruthvik or vice versa constitutes an upset, but I think if there is an upset this week, it will be Conor beating EBO. Anything you want to add, Cam?
Nope. Yeah, thanks for an excellent week 1, and let's hope for a even better week 2.
Yeah, excited to see what the rest of the season holds. If it's as exciting as week 1 was, and we are in for a fun season, everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. With that, we'll see you all next week. And until then.